Lovely to have you on. How are you?
Doing greatly. Thanks for having me.
So, for folks that haven't come across Jared Young before or Maropost, can you tell a bit more about your story and your journey to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, thanks for having me. Been listening for a while, and you have great content, and excited to be a part of it, part of the library moving forward. So for me, I have personally been in and around sales for as long as I can possibly remember. Sales is something that I think a lot of people fall into. Anybody listening has probably fallen into sales. They didn't wake up one day in college and say, I think I'm going to go and really become a salesperson. My journey started when I was trying to get through and pay for college by being a bartender, having some really great guests day in and day out at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and hearing time and time again that I had to get into sales as I tried to upsell them the larger steak or the better bottle of wine. Right? That's how we made our money for a long time. So after that, I went down the traditional path of starting off as an SDR and pounding the phones. Frankly, I think it's two things that every single salesperson and sales leader should have to do at some point in their career is work in the hospitality industry and have to make several hundreds, if not thousands of dials per month. They are two skills that will take you far and beyond of where you ever thought you'd go in sales. And if you can get good at those two things, you'll probably be pretty dang good at everything. From there, just kind of started to rise through the ranks of being an account executive on the SMB side, getting into enterprise, account management, spent a lot of time in channel partnerships, and eventually ended up with this company called Maropost. Been here a little under a year. Really, really interesting company. What we do is we really unite the commerce tools and insights that growing brands need to engage customers, scale their business. So we're built on a very large unified customer data platform and an enterprise grade infrastructure and offer a complete set of tools from marketing and email marketing to merchandising, search merchant personalization, customer service, e-commerce, retail solutions. And we're specifically focusing on the e-commerce world in mid-market. So excited about where the company's going, excited to be about part of it. We are global, which is probably the first time I'm dealing with a global company from Australia to India to Canada to EMEA, everywhere in between. It creates a whole new level of challenges and really opens up a much larger TAM. But it's a catch-22 at times for sure.
Amazing. And interested to dig into like your experiences both with Maropost and kind of leading up to this point. I want to start with kind of a general vague-ish question. What would you say is unique about your approach to sales and by proxy, your team?
Yeah, great question. When it comes to sales, I think what I would hear most often is as I think about sales, it has changed over the years. Sales was once upon a time, it was mostly an art, right? And folks were born with it. They were good at selling Cutco knives and knocking door to door and be able to be really persuasive. And I don't think that works anymore in our day and age, right? Because sales doesn't really begin when you have a conversation. Sales begins when you're looking for intent and engagement and buyer signals out in the market. So it has become significantly more of a process driven science. And I think it's been a hard change for a lot of folks to figure out what is that process and what is predictable versus, can I show up to every single call, ask the same questions, position my value the same way. For me, it's been really focused on what is that process and what is similar across the processes of my team while also still maintaining their level of uniqueness because every seller brings a very different uniqueness to the table, has a different selling style, and you never want to take that away. So how do you balance the art and the science? It's been a fun thing to figure out over the last couple of years, I think.
I think it's a really interesting point and also a really interesting challenge to be able to to battle with both the process side of it and also the individual skill that goes into it as well. So, what for everyone's kind of context listening, what kind of brought Jared to my attention was kind of touching on the 2024 benchmark data that we came out with a month or so ago now, and something that we talked about a lot in that report that that I'm definitely curious to get your perspective on, Jared, is we were looking at, what are the top performing reps doing that perhaps the average performers aren't? And to your point that you kind of raised there, every seller has their own style. They have their own approach. And what's interesting is that what approach works obviously varies by company. So in your world at Maropost, what are the top performers doing that the average performers perhaps are not?
Well, I'll start off by saying this, and this is a polarizing stat that I pulled right out of your report. It was only 17% of reps are generating 81% of revenue, indicating an extremely heavily reliance on a few sellers. So to put it cleanly, that scares the shit out of me, because that's not what you want. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. It's almost like saying we're an extremely profitable and healthy company, but we're really dependent on 80% of our revenue only being in two customers, right? Well, what happens if you lose that one customer? What happens if you lose that one rep? They're very, very similar. And if we're not thinking about how to maintain a level of linearity across the team, you're setting yourself up for failure, or you're putting yourself in a position where you lose control as a company and as the organization. So that stat is polarizing, and I think it plays well into this question, because as you start to think about what separates a good from a great rep, a lot of what separates those two things should go into how you hire your reps at the same time, how you hire and how you scale your team. I think there's a lot, and it's a big, bold question, but I'll probably boil it down to 2 points that stick out most of what separates good from great. For me, this is a very easy one, and I think anybody would agree to this, is in our day and age, a good rep can sell, right? A good rep probably has a relatively decent process. They're probably going to have a relatively high win rate, and they're going to be relatively consistent, right? That's a good rep. What is going to separate a great rep from that person is the person that can go out there and generate a level of their own demand. Not 100% of it, because that would be a very, very tough job, but they can contribute to their pipeline in a very demonstrable way. Meaning that they're not going to sit around their hands and wait for that next marketing lead to come or that next partner to bring forward a potential opportunity, but they're going to go generate it. And that for me, that's the difference between the 80%ers and the 100%ers, the 100% and the 120, when they know exactly how to bake their cake, but then they know they're the frosting that they want to be able to put on top of their own level of demand generation. And man, it's a lot easier said than done. It is stinking hard, which is why I harp so hard on both the hospitality experience and the SDR experience, because if you have done those two things, you can replicate it further on in your career and never forget about it. But man, you jump into sales and you become account executive right away and you're holistically dependent on inbound. It's going to be a rough rodeo when you do have to develop a level of your own pipeline. Now, the second thing that I would say, and for me, this is something that I really spend a tremendous amount of time on, is the selling style that reps have. So I think when we think about modern sales, it has changed significantly, right? For so long, we've harped on value selling, getting away from feature selling, right? Not just having a bunch of demo dummies. But what I think has evolved to this next step is we're not hiring for people that can conduct demos or run processes, but now we're trying to hire for consultants. And that for me is an absolute game changer. And when I say consultants, right, I think one of the number one reasons why people buy from companies is because they go through a sales process and they probably learned a lot along the way. So one of our core goals as a team is for every call that we have with a customer, were we able to essentially teach them something or get them to open up their mind about their business, get them to think about it a different way, maybe dig deep into a pain point that they knew and they understood, but they didn't really understand the root cause or how it affected their business. The more that we can become less salespeople and more consultants and frankly masters of our craft, the easier that sales becomes at the end of the day. So those are probably two of the things that I would focus on is a level of demand generation. And am I hiring folks that can be consultative, that can be, that can understand how to help folks open their minds to the art of the possible. So in our example, right, one of our core products is, we have an ESP, an email service provider. So we're working with marketers all day long. And marketers that have been in the business for many, many years, they understand email strategy. So what we need to become on our sales team is mini CMOs to help understand how to segment, how to create content, how to add personalization, and how to introduce new strategies into an existing strategy for a business. So understanding how their business works, understanding how businesses make money, understanding what's unique about them, right? These are all things that salespeople today probably don't spend enough time doing, but the more that we do it, the more that we focus on you and your business, the easier I can figure out how to insert mine.
I love both points, and I came up with two questions off the back of it, and I think I'll actually go as the second one because I've heard it a few times, and I completely agree around this idea of hiring consultants. I'm from my perspective, I look at our own internal sales team, and it's your role when you are speaking to a prospect is almost not to like sell directly to them. Like your role is to help them to find the right solution. So that is listening to them, understanding the pain that they've got, and prescribing the right solution. So that might be your own offering and your own products, in which case great, but also it might not be, right? I think as a salesperson, you're so driven by your quota and your commission that often that can lead to bringing in, sometimes the wrong customers, and through the purpose of, well, I just got to get a deal over the line, I got to hit my target. And so to your point of hiring in consultants, I'm actually perhaps looking at this from the perspective of the existing team that you've got at the minute. How do you train reps to be consultative?
Yeah, great question. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because what a lot of companies will want to do out of the box is hire people with industry experience in whatever their vertical is. And in my career, I've never been successful at being able to do that, right? Because I have a lot of, when I think about hiring, I think about will versus skill, right? And will to me is more important. Are they going to be able to put in the work, take the coaching, study the industry, be incredibly curious, right? And really want to grind and get to that level. Skill being, can they actually execute on that, right? But then there's industry experience that kind of lives within that skills category. And it's really hard to combine those things with somebody that's been in the industry for a long time. And it so happens to be in the market at the right time, unhappy with somebody else and wants to come to you. So a big part of the training that we do, let's just pretend that I hired you as an account executive on our team today, is within the first probably 3 or 4 weeks of you being a part of our company, I don't even introduce you to the product. We're essentially putting you through what I would call like a mini MBA in becoming a true email marketer, in becoming a merchandiser, in becoming an e-commerce merchant. So you can really understand and sit in their shoes as somebody on the other side of the table that you're ultimately going to be selling to. And for us, does it prolong our ramp of a rep? Absolutely it does, right? But at the same time, if we think about the long-term vision, these people are going to be producing at a much higher clip a lot sooner and selling better, healthier deals, right? Really good example is what you said a minute ago is oftentimes you might be, you may have to just disqualify some folks because they might not be the right fit, right? If you have really good consultants as account executives on your team, they'll know who is a great fit for your product or who might be somebody that is just going to churn after a certain period of time. We only want to bring healthy revenue into the business. And the healthiest revenue is going to come from the reps that know who the best customers are and where our product doesn't just fit into their strategy, but becomes a demonstrable part of what they do day in and day out. It becomes their engine, right? It becomes the lifeblood of their business. So it's a tough one to take a step back and just teach people what it's like to be essentially an operator in whatever vertical that they're trying to sell into. But that investment makes it so worth it over the long period of time because then the conversations become real. It's less of me trying to sell you my product, more me just trying to understand your business.
And I think it leads on to, something that I've asked folks before is, what are the skills that you're looking for when you're hiring someone? And very often people are like, I want someone that's quite curious, someone that's quite personable. I think to your point, it kind of increases the value of having empathy, of being able to put yourself in their shoes to be able to go, okay, I can feel that pain that you're having. I understand you, to then really be able to prescribe the right solution then.
That's exactly it. And to your point of like, what are those things that we're looking for? I think that you'll hear the same thing from most sales leaders out there, right? They want, grit, grinder, hungry, curiosity, right? Of course, all those things are really important. But I think when you're really trying to evaluate talent, you should probably have a bit more of a matrix. And that's why will versus skill, which I mentioned earlier, is something I go back to all the time, right? And there's a lot that goes into it. But on the will side, right, I'm thinking about top of funnel, coachability, and paying the tax. On the skill side, I'm thinking about their sales motion, right? Their sales acumen, their business acumen. I'm thinking about their presentation skills. I'm thinking about their industry knowledge and figuring out where do they sit in basically a 9 box between those two things. I personally value will a bit more because I think skill can be teachable. I'd rather invest in somebody that is going to invest in this company versus somebody that is incredibly highly skilled, but might fail on the coachability side. Coachability for me is number one.
And that makes total sense to me too. I want to change this up a gear. Something that I noted kind of coming into this conversation, your as I understand it, your specialty is really on building successful, scalable teams. So what does it mean to you to build a scalable team?
Yeah, it's a great question. Scalable it's an interesting time to use the word scale, right? In the last couple of years, the tech and the SaaS industry is seen a rough road. So there's a couple of ways I might put scalable to the side and use the term successful for a minute. What we saw in the past, right, was so many companies that were just hiring to meet a annual operating plan, right? By the end of this year, I need to have 22 people in seat in order for me to hit this number, right? And really just trying to hire based upon revenue. Where one of the things that we've learned the hard way is it's not always about the operating plan, but it's about running a successful and a profitable team, and figuring out the correlation between sales and demand generation and making sure that the two are keeping up with each other. If your sales hiring ever gets way ahead of your demand generation, then you're just going to have a very expensive team of ultimately SDRs, right? Especially if you just hire a bunch of account executives. And that's the last thing that anybody wants because nobody's happy, nobody's making money, and you're just really probably over flexing on the outbound side. Where flip side, if you have a great relationship between partnerships, marketing, and sales, you can really start to predict what demand generation is going to look like and be able to hire accordingly. So I think in order to get to the point of scalability, you're thinking about demand gen, frankly, more than anything else, and how to hire towards that. So the way that I think about demand gen is I think about our entire pipeline as an ocean or a pool. And then I want to understand what each stream that keeps my ocean full looks like and how does it contribute to keeping my ocean full. So for example, partnerships would be one stream that's flowing down and understanding what the flow of that stream looks like. Marketing would be another. There's many little streams that falls off of marketing, like events versus inbound versus webinars, whatever the case may be. Then you have your AE self-source and you have your outbound SDR. So there's all these little streams that I continue to add to my ocean. I try and add more over time as we become a mature organization, like upsell and cross-sell or referrals. And the more streams that you can have, the more you can diversify your overall pipeline funnel, the less dependence you have on one specific stream. That being said, like you need to have good partners all the way across the business to make sure that their streams are consistently at a trickle.
I feel like I can visualize it as you're talking through it, but I would definitely love to dig into more how you do that. So, what could you perhaps give an example of what that might look like? Because to me, it's almost we've got. When you say streams, it's kind of we've got leads coming in from here, here, and here, and it's making sure that we've got enough at each stage to ensure that we've got the, for want of a better word, coverage that we need to ensure that, by the time that we are closing at the end of the quarter and we're going into the next quarter, that we have enough ready to go kind of at the early stage that's going to be able to keep the momentum going longer term. That's kind of how I'm picturing it, but I'd love to hear in your words how you go about doing it.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, one of the things I want to tout is definitely the idea of having a partnership and a channel partner team, especially in this day and age where I think we're all seeing the price of marketing become more and more expensive on a per lead basis. Like there are some plays and campaigns that you run and you're like, the cost per lead is absolutely outrageous and not scalable. So one of the things that stuck out to me, and what was funny about the report that I read that you guys put out, is I almost didn't feel like I learned a lot that was new, but it was really validating for me to know that I wasn't the only person that was dealing with some industry struggles, so to speak, but B, that we were on the right path and making a lot of the right moves based upon a lot of the stats that you put out there. And partnerships is actually one that had stuck out because we're putting a lot of time and attention into our channel and our partnerships team. And partnerships can mean a lot of things. It could be tech partners. It could be strategic alliances. It can be agencies, right? It can be so many different things. There's a lot that you can do with it, but it is an incredibly cost-effective way. It greatly, the ROI that you get from partnership is going to be great, but it is hard to stand up and it takes a little bit of time. But the thing that caught my attention in your report was that I think it was something like only 8% of organizations are even running a partner strategy. And to me, that's absolutely barbaric because with the right people in the right places and the right strategy, and I have seen partnerships become 40 to 60% of the overall revenue for a business. So for our side and how I'm thinking about it is for each one of these streams, we are thinking typically not too far ahead. We only want to go 1 to 2 quarters ahead and think about what are all the strategies that we're going to run, for example, from a partner perspective over the next quarter. There's only a certain amount of budget every single company has. There's only so many heads, so much time. So we want to make strategic bets early on and really stick to those bets. That being said, if over time we've stuck to these bets, we've put in the time, attention, and frankly, investment that it takes, but we're not seeing the return, we're making sure that we have our metrics down packed to see what our ROI is looking like, we can make smart pivots and have essentially backup plans for different plays or different campaigns that are run. So for example, in partner and in marketing, every quarter, we're going to probably choose somewhere between 2 and 5 strategic plays that we want to run. When I say plays, it could be events that we want to go to. It could be partnerships that we want to enable. It could be certain promotions or campaigns. It could be a competitive takeaway that we want to do, right? That's what I mean by plays. And we want to make sure that we educate our entire organization on exactly what we're doing in each one of these streams, each one of these funnels, and make sure that the team is educated on what plays that we're doing, how we're doing them, and what their role is within those plays. Frankly, a lot easier said than done. Right. A lot of the education that happens internally is one of the most important parts, because we can say we're doing something, but it is all about the preparation and the execution of how we set those things up. So one of the things I talk about all the time is preparation, whether we're talking about sales, whether we're talking about generating demand. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is Thomas Edison, who said, "Strategy without execution is just hallucination." And I think that could not be more accurate. The only thing I would add to it is that execution does not ensure a successful strategy. Preparation is probably the single most important ingredient in everything that we do. So strategy is the dream. Execution is the expectation, but preparation is the work. And that's how you make sure all three of those things go together.
That's you were evoking a different another quote, and I wish I could remember it now, but you make such a good point, and that certainly it resonates for me. I've spoken to a few folks that are, we've gone from beautiful strategy into, we're just drilled into the execution of what we're doing. And so I love as well that you raise it's the second time in recent weeks that partnerships has come up again. I think it's one of those that when times get tough, as it is for a number of businesses at the minute, that you start to cut away the things that aren't working. And actually, for those that do have a partnerships team, it's all of a sudden like, oh, hello. Actually, I didn't realize quite how effective it was proven to be, and it kind of goes under the radar. And I'm interested to dig into that a little bit more from your perspective. As you say, I think it was somewhere between 8 and 12% actually have a partnerships function. So for folks that are listening that perhaps don't have one, or they're in the very early stages of setting one up, how do you build a profitable relationship between partners and your own business and your sales team?
Yeah, I don't know that there's one answer to that question, because I think it is dependent on the type of partnership that you're looking to activate, right? The strategy you take with an agency is going to look very different than the strategy that you take with a strategic partner or an alliance that you create. But the one thing that I've always had in the back of my head as I think about partnerships throughout my career is companies that are starting up a partnership arm of their business for the first time are typically extremely selfish, right? They're standing it up because they want to generate more pipeline and more sales, right? That's obviously the goal, but you're not going to do a really good job if you take a selfish approach to it, right? I always have the what's in it for me in the back of my head when I'm thinking about the partner that I'm working with. It's really no different than an account executive executing a sale, right? The account executive wants to sign a deal so the company makes money and they get a commission check. Partnerships, very similar. They want to sign a partner so they get pipeline and they get revenue. But the core part of it is treating it like a sale and figuring out what are the key pain points that I can solve for this partner by partnering with my company, right? Is it monetarily related, right? Are they looking to get a percentage of the revenue that they bring in perpetuity? Are they looking for a referral bonus? Those things are typically, I think, probably they were more important early on in my partnerships career, but I've really seen channel and partnership develop into being a strategic arm of our partner's business, meaning that they're partnering with companies like Maropost because we're providing a service that is going to enhance the lives of their customers in their portfolio, right? Something that they weren't able to do before. We're bringing a new value that they weren't able to bring to their customers before. We're helping their customers propel their business to an entirely new level. And in turn, that makes them a better partner for the folks that they're working with. So it depends, again, on the type of partnership that you're looking into. But I would say is if you're doing this for the first time, don't do it selfishly, right? There is going to be an investment. There is going to be a cost. And you really need to evaluate what type of partnership is going to be best for my company. Analyze, study that field, just ask the questions, right? Why partner with a company like ours? What is in it for you, and how can I be your very best partner?
I really like that. I want to pull on what I noted down and definitely keen to dig into a bit more. You spoke of execution and the importance of it, and a lovely quote from Thomas Edison. So how do you go about perfecting is maybe not quite the right word, but how do you go about ensuring excellence in execution with your sales team?
Yeah, love this topic. And this is a tough one because I think excellence and expecting excellence, demanding excellence, and being excellent is something that essentially gets ingrained into your sales team's culture over time. It's something that you build up, you have tons of repetition towards. But one of the analogies that I use all the time to just put it into perspective is think of, and I hate using sports analogies in sales because it's way too often, but it's impossible not to. But think about like people like Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods and how they went to the very top of their game, right? They didn't just show up and play on a daily basis, but they went so above and beyond everybody else in their category because of the way that they prepared for each and every single practice, each and every single game. So if you end up looking up Peyton Manning and his habits at some point in time, replicating the way that he prepares is something that literally anybody can do, whether you're in sales or any other profession. And it's going to lead to great execution, especially if you have a really good strategy on the other side. So step one of Peyton Manning's process is film study. And for me, that is my favorite thing in the entire world. So utilizing a great tool that does call recording to be able to run the tape back. And you're not just running the tape back to analyze what the customer said, but you're also analyzing yourself and your habits, right? Am I asking the right questions? Am I practicing patience? What does my talk time actually look like? Did I miss a core piece of information? Could I have asked a different question? Then I'll ask on another call. Film study for me isn't just watching your own film, but it's watching all of your teammates' films. So one of those things, going back to your question earlier of good to great, my best reps in my entire career blew everybody away from a film study perspective because they watched what it takes to be great and they incorporated those habits, not just from themselves, but everybody across the team. Because again, everybody has their own uniqueness. But another core part of that is practice and repetition. That would be the second thing. And this is something that nobody wants to do, right? For myself, for account executives, right? We've all been doing this for a long time, many years. We think we're at the top of our craft. So you don't want to do role plays anymore. But man, if you just go in and you practice, I'll give you an example of something that we do really often. Let's just say we're working one of our most important strategic complex deals. And we have an important call coming up where we are maybe we're doing a technical demo. We're bringing in all sorts of people into the call, like a solution engineer, myself, or maybe we're bringing in a C-suite executive and they're bringing a whole bunch of people to the table. The first thing that we do is we just do what we call a blueprint call, where we go and we scope out for our team, what is everybody's role? How will they participate? And how much time is everybody going to have on each section? Ultimately coming up with literally a game plan of how we're going to execute the call almost minute by minute, and how we're going to transition, hand it off to each other, ensure that we're engaging the audience. The second step of what we do is we do another call and we'll run a complete role play and essentially take our cold game plan and see if it works and have everybody practice their role, participate and go through the motions. So that way, by the time that we come to the actual call, we'll have ran it already. We know what we're to do. We know how to transition. Everybody has a role. There's no pointless folks on the call that are just showing up and waving and saying hi. Everybody has a purpose, and every question we ask has a purpose. And don't get me wrong, you always have to be audible ready because no matter how well that you prepare, there's always going to be something that changes the script or something that changes the agenda. But man, if you do your best to go in as prepared as humanly possible, your percentage to go and execute a great call is infinitely higher. And I'll be frank, sometimes we do a prep call for the prep call for the prep call for the prep call because we want to run it a couple of different times. But it instills high win rates and people want to do it. Once you do it a few times and you see success, it just becomes ingrained in the DNA and people can't wait to prep for the prep for the prep, as ridiculous as that may sound.
No, I love it actually. And if I don't think maybe we touched on it, but obviously what comes up is that I assume for the types of deals that you're working on are typically more of the enterprise size. Is that right?
I would say we balance between probably mid-market and low enterprise. But it's interesting. One of the challenges we're facing as a company is we're going from probably a more transactional sale to more of a complex, thought out process now. And so it's been a really interesting transition.
Yeah, because I asked the question because, the almost the time investment, because I love everything that you're saying. And obviously the time investment to map out a game plan, for a systems thinker like I am, I'm like, yes, love it. To go and like role play it and to, it's almost like a practice match. You've got me doing sports analogies now. Doing that practice beforehand so that on the day, I think in terms of ways of thinking about it, it's almost like a pre-mortem as well is another way that I've heard it phrased, whereby I enjoy doing that from a marketing perspective when we're running campaigns, for example. It's the question of, okay, we've got all of these wonderful ideas and we think it's going to do this. And it's kind of hard to be the bad guy, but it requires someone to be like, but what will go wrong? Like, what is one question that if the prospect asks it to us, that we're going to fall flat on our faces, that we need to be able to have an answer for? That something that I've been trying to dig into myself is around like objections. So how do top performers overcome objections more effectively than others? Because we know from our data and our analysis that that's what the top performers are doing. They're turning that objection over, am I going to see a return on this, into a positive, because they can actually see the potential return on it. And it's how do you actually go and do that? And I think the kind of process that you talked about enables being able to anticipate those objections beforehand and have the right answers if they do arise.
Yeah, there's two things that you said that just had my mind going there is number one is you're not going to do this type of preparation for every deal, right? Just not realistic, especially if you have some smaller, more transactional deals, right? That would just be, you have to have a relationship between the amount of time you prep and what the deal is actually worth. But the second and more important thing that stuck with me when you were going through that process is the idea of a team and team preparation is such a game changer for the exact example that you gave when you have one person that says, well, what if they ask this? Well, here's an idea that maybe we haven't thought of. Account executives nowadays are less lone wolves than they used to be, but now they're almost like they're field generals. They're like Peyton Manning, like they're quarterbacks where they are calling the right plays. They are bringing the right people on the field at the right time. And they know what it looks like and it takes to move a deal forward, even if they're not necessarily executing every single part of the role, right? I really want and think account executives need to feel empowered and not afraid to lean on the people that have more experience in a certain field, lean on the technical folks, lean on some of the executive team, and ask tons of questions and get more people involved internally, because everybody will help you see around corners, right? 3-4 brains is always going to be better than one. And the purpose of having a team is figuring out how do I get from point A to point B the fastest.
Yeah. And it all comes back to the point that you were making at the beginning of like being that consultative seller. And actually, I think it's a skill in itself to be that quarterback and, having the boldness to be like, you know what, this is a massive opportunity here. We need to call in the big guns and the C-suite onto this call so that we can show that we are serious about this as as we are, right? It's being able to, it's listening and understanding and going, okay, this is actually quite a technical implementation, for example, and I want to make sure that we're actually able to do this, and I'm not selling them a dream. Instead, I want to be selling them reality, and that's where the solutions engineer comes into it. And so this all comes back to the point you were making of earlier of educating your reps up to the point that they understand it so well and understand it so intrinsically that they can be emboldened through the sales process to know who they need to call on to make sure that you're presenting the right solution back to the client.
And that's exactly it. Nobody in the organization should ever know any person's specific deal better than the account executive themselves. But I think, going back to the idea of hiring, having account executives that have no problem leaving their ego at the door, which can be tough in sales at times, are going to be the best account executives because they have no shame in bringing people into their deal. They have no shame taking coaching and doing something incrementally better in the next call. Like, the idea of a healthy sales culture is when we're all trying to get better in every step of the process together. That's a hard thing to do with an ego in the way.
Absolutely. I want to ask one final question. And your words, not mine. What is barbaric energy?
Oh, wow. Fantastic question. So, barbaric energy, I don't even know if I can put a definition. That is a feeling. That's an au natural. So I guess I'll just kind of give you a funny story. So one
Please.
of the when I first started with Maropost, I got sent a form, and I thought this form would just go right to my boss, who I already knew pretty well already, and said, "Hey, like, what's one thing that they should know about you?" And what I put was, "I'm an absolute barbarian." And what I didn't know is that went to the entire sales organization, the entire organization itself. So my first day was really interesting because everybody was asking me that exact question: is what is a barbarian? And I guess my answer was just, you'll see. For me, it's just bringing the energy, bringing the positive, the positive light to every situation, and starting every day and starting every call, ready to go and ready to get after it and try and make people laugh and smile along the way, because you want to wake up every day and be excited to go to work and love the people that you work with. And you also want to work with people that are going to drive to get you to do better and expect excellence. And I think all those things roll up into a barbarian pretty well.
I love it. And to be fair, I'd noted this down coming into this conversation. And as we've been talking, I was looking at it and I was like, I think actually you've kind of demonstrated it throughout the conversation anyway. But love to hear it in your own words. Jared, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing insights into your world and what things are like at Maropost. For anyone that is listening, where can they find you?
Yeah, great question. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me with Maropost, and then you can find me all over the globe. We're doing a lot of travel, a lot of events. So keep your eye out, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to shake hands in short time.
Amazing. I will put links to those down in the show notes below. Jared, thank you so much again. And to everyone listening, thank you. Catch you next week.
Thank you, sir.